Have you ever looked at a landscape and felt like you were reading a story? Well, today we're going to decipher a tale of just immense power, one that's written not in ink, but in stone, all across the surface of our planet.
And that whole story, it really kicks off with a big question. I mean, we look at maps of the world. We see mountains, valleys, lakes, all the usual stuff. But have you ever stopped and wondered what colossal force actually carved some of the most dramatic features we see?
All right, let's start our investigation right here. Take a look at this map of the northeastern United States and the Great Lakes. Now, at first glance, it might just look like a jumble of terrain, right? But trust me, hidden in these lines and shadows are some major clues to an incredible geological story.
Let's look a little closer. First clue, do you see these long, kind of arcing ridges? They sweep across the land for miles and miles, almost like someone drew them there. They definitely don't look like your typical mountain ranges. So, what are they?
And here's clue number 2. Check out these huge areas that just look scraped clean, smoothed out. And then there are the massive troughs that hold the Great Lakes themselves. Something unimaginably huge and heavy must have just plowed its way across this entire region.
So what on earth could act like a bulldozer the size of a continent, powerful enough to push up ridges like that and gouge out lakes? Well, the answer isn't a force from deep inside the earth. It's one of nature's most powerful sculptors.
And here is our culprit. On the left, you're looking at North America about 28,000 years ago, just buried under these massive ice sheets. Now compare that to today. On the right, the ice is gone, but it left behind a completely reshaped continent. These were glaciers, and we're not talking about the pretty mountain glaciers you see in pictures. No, these were continent-sized sheets of ice, thousands of feet thick, flowing slowly but absolutely unstoppably across the land.
But how, exactly, does a slow-moving river of ice manage to completely rearrange a landscape? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like a giant, natural conveyor belt, a process with a clear beginning, middle, and end.
It all breaks down into 3 pretty simple stages. First is the pickup, where the sheer weight of the ice just scours and scoops up tons of rock and soil. Then comes the ride, where all that material gets carried, sometimes for hundreds of miles. And finally, the drop-off, where the glacier melts and just dumps everything it was carrying. Now this pickup phase, it's not just one simple thing. It's more like a 1-2 punch. First, you've got abrasion. That's where rocks frozen into the bottom of the glacier act like giant sandpaper, grinding the bedrock smooth. Then there's plucking, where meltwater freezes and cracks, expands like a wedge, and literally pries huge chunks of rock loose for the ice to carry away. Okay, so once that material is picked up, it goes for the ride. And you can think of the glacier as this multi-level transport system. You've got supraglacial debris, which is all the stuff carried right on the surface. Then there's englacial material, which is trapped deep inside the ice itself. And finally, you have the subglacial stuff, which is all the rock and sediment being dragged along at the very bottom. That's the sandpaper doing all the hard work. And where this material rides is so important because it determines what kind of landforms get created at the drop-off point. Okay, so the glacier picks material up, carries it for miles, but eventually that conveyor belt has to stop. And what happens during that final drop-off phase? Well, that's what solves the whole mystery we started with.
Let's jump back to our map. Remember those strange curved ridges we couldn't explain? They are the direct results of that glacial drop-off. They are exactly what the ice leaves behind.
And these ridges have a name. They're called moraines. As a glacier melts, all the junk it was carrying, this unsorted mix of rocks, gravel, and sand called till, just gets dumped in a massive pile at its edge. Over time, it builds up into these huge ridges. So here's the really mind-blowing part. When you see a moraine, you are looking at a ghost. It's the precise outline, the fossilized footprint of where the edge of an ancient glacier paused for hundreds, maybe thousands of years.
And that's how you read a glacier's signature. You've got the moraines, those ridges, you've got the huge, smoothed areas from abrasion, and the rough, uneven terrain from plucking. But the story gets even more detailed. That unsorted till can also get sculpted by the moving ice into these long, teardrop-shaped hills called drumlins. And sometimes, meltwater flowing in tunnels under the glacier leaves behind winding ridges of sand and gravel called eskers. The entire story is written right there in the landscape.
So you see, these features aren't just random bumps on a map. No, they are chapters in a much, much larger story. A story that connects the deep past to the world we all live in today.
The story of the Ice Age is not ancient history. The soil in so many of the world's most fertile farmlands,
That was deposited by glaciers. The lakes we fish in, the valleys we live in, they were carved by ice. We are literally living in a world sculpted by these amazing forces.
But this story of geological sculpting, it isn't over. The great continental ice sheets might be gone, but their smaller descendants are still here, and they are changing fast. We got a huge reminder of this back in 2002, when a massive section of Antarctica's Larsen ice shelf just collapsed, showing us that these powerful forces are still actively and dramatically reshaping our world.
The Ice Age glaciers left behind a world of Great Lakes, fertile plains, and sculpted mountains. They gave us the landscape we know. So as we watch today's remaining ice sheets and glaciers shrink, it leaves us with one heck of a question. What kind of world will they leave behind for the generations to come?